Hello, hello.
Hello.
I lost you there for a minute, Thomas.
Yes, I got back in, thankfully. I don't know what that was, but took a minute. Oh, well.
And we are here today to talk about Roger Federer's WikiTree Challenge Week. So how do you think the week went?
I thought it went very well. I was not at all certain what to expect when we got started. I mean, it's not the first time we've had South African or Swiss genealogy on the challenge, but it is the first time that we're dealing with I think quite so recent and so quite thorough and all that. And so we started with these two locations, and as I know we're going to get into, we managed to expand the number of locations we were looking at by a great deal. So
Yeah,
all things considered,
I thought that
very
was pretty
successful.
exciting. We're lucky
Yeah.
in that most of the people that we've had have a pretty diverse background this year. Like where last year we had some people that were just from one or two locations. This year they've been pretty diverse. So, if you don't know one location's research, you can pick a different ancestor to work on. But this time we did start with only Switzerland and South Africa. So that was really, really interesting and different.
Yeah, and that's what I've enjoyed most about this year. Has been, how, I mean, it was the case last year as well, but I think especially this year we've had some more varied locations and more recent, presence in locations other than the United States. That it's been wonderful seeing how all of our members have been able to just rush in at the drop of a hat on pretty much any area of research, and it works out every time. It's always fantastic to see.
I know, they always amaze me. Everybody just pulls together and, they find something out of nothing. We start with those great grandparents, and that's been pretty much it this year, since we stopped doing the live guests. And, so we're only starting with the first great grandparents, and that's a lot of work to do. And these guys have just added an incredible amount of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, do we want to go over the basic stats over how much we managed to add?
That. Give your screen up. It's thinking about it.
Yeah. Let's see.
Do you want me to show mine and you can read yours off, or?
Let me try one more time to see if it works. Sorry, okay. Technology is being a little bit iffy today. We'll pull up. All right, here's the. Is that working now?
There we go.
Good, finally. Oh, but now I'm getting an echo. Okay, so sounds better now. Okay, so we have the basic information here. We also have we have it listed on our G2G page. We have added, since the beginning of the week, 149 direct ancestors, 245 nuclear relatives of ancestors, 325 additional relatives within 7 degrees, and all in all, Roger now has more than 1,640 people connected within 7 degrees. So we've been looking a lot at the connection distances that everyone's had, and there were a number of our members who actually ended up being within very close connection distance with Roger. Specifically, I think thanks to the South African side, in which all of those profiles seem to be fairly closely connected. And yeah, no, it was really quite impressive to see. And with regards to my own connection to him, I saw a pretty big leap as well. At the beginning of the week, I had a very distant line that was through one of the Dutch sides on the South African part of the family. And now, thanks to being able to add that English branch and all of that, the connection came down quite a bit. I think almost 7 degrees or something. So it was impressive to see that. But as we can look on the totals here at the bottom of the page, we have by, I believe, 3,156 total edits to all the various profiles, so across 1,125 profiles. And we're looking at 130 bounty points awarded, which compared to a couple of recent weeks we've done is a pretty good number. So
Yeah.
all in all, the stats were very good this week. I was quite pleased to see that.
And really impressive for those totals considering it's just 1 week. I mean,
Yeah.
it's 1 week. 1 week goes so fast. And then, what you were talking about, the people that were closer. And with this tree, I think because some of the locations were so specialized, and the South African side does already have a lot developed on WikiTree, so that was really helpful for people's connections. But unfortunately, with the Switzerland side, they were mostly from Berneck. They wound up in Berneck and they stayed in Berneck. So we didn't see a lot of connections necessarily through that. But, the South African side, they came in from England and all over. And so we actually wound up with 11 people that were less than 20 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and list those off just because this was fun. The rest of us, keep in mind, we're around 50, 55 degrees. I think I'm at 51. But we had Pam Smith, who wound up at 17. Vicky Seward is at 13 degrees. Lewis Heyman at 16. Francis Lehman at 17. Errol Lishman at 15. Dennis Meter at 17. Ann Blom at 16. Elizabeth Steen at 19. Our closest, Lucas Venter, was at 10. Hendrik Verwoerd at 18, and then Sean Wallace at 16. So, I mean, that was pretty good. That was a nice chunk of people that were closely connected.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know that you're absolutely right. We did find a great deal of difficulty adding more of those connections on the Swiss side of the family, but I think given everything that we put together, all the profiles we attached to the category and the space page, was it Donna who set up the space page, or
Donna set it up.
Yeah. With everything with that, I hopefully, if anyone who with connections to Berneck joins WikiTree, they will find it fairly easy to connect their family. That would be nice at the very least.
I know they'll probably be excited. I would have been excited if one of my locations was already fleshed out and had a one space page, and or one place study done on it and had all those profiles.
That's why we should all be creating them for our own families. You never know, who might be able to appreciate it. I'm going to real quickly run through the scoreboard as well, and then I think we'll get into some of the interesting finds. Does that sound good? Since we have the scoreboard up already. So in the first place this week, we had Catherine Milton, who I believe she was focusing primarily on the South African side, and she was one of the people who was fairly closely connected to him, right? Ended up being, I think, seventh cousins or something. So with 252 points total and then 408 edits. Then we have Guillaume, who always does so much work, and it's always interesting to see what Guillaume is able to come up with. Yeah, it's always a lot to do. Then in third place, we have Chris O'Connell, followed by myself, and I don't really count, but I probably would have had a higher number if I hadn't gotten a cold in the middle of the week, but it's just bad timing. Then we have Dunya Brandes in fifth place with 131. Then Lucy Salvaggio Diaz in sixth, Donna Bauman in seventh, Karen Lowe in eighth, Maddie Hartman in ninth, and Sean Wallace in 10th. And then we have a total of 30 people who are listed on the scoreboard. We had a lot of people who came in and did a little bit of work, including you, although that obviously doesn't count either.
I know we people got to tease me because I always try for 0 points since they don't count anyways, and I got 4 whole points accidentally this time. So
yep. Oh well.
That's what happens when you work out on those outer branches and you don't go out quite far enough. But
exactly.
It's fun to see. Yeah. And to see our captains too, all of our captains, we wouldn't be able to do this without you guys. And to see a number of our captains up in the top of the list is pretty great to see that they're still, dedicated to the challenge, even though it isn't their week. So
Yeah,
for those
absolutely.
locations, I want to mention that we did wind up with adding Brazil, England, France, Germany, Netherlands, Portugal, and the United States. So, once again, all of those people branching in or out of South Africa.
Yeah. Let's see.
And I did
And
not get
yeah.
to really spend much time on that one little tiny Portugal branch. Man, I wanted to. It was so
I'm
tempting.
sure. How far back was the Portugal line? I'm curious.
It was pretty far back there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have. Are we still planning to do a guest with mostly Portuguese ancestry later this year? Is that
I don't think
on the
so. We
list?
had one that was picked out that was a soccer player, but that's kind of been
Yeah.
shifted this year a little bit, just depending on, because of news and what's been happening lately. So
Yeah. That's
maybe
fair.
next year.
I was looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
so was
I
I.
have no knowledge of Portuguese research whatsoever, and so I want to learn from you and everyone else who does have that expertise.
Yeah. It's really fun.
Be
And
interesting.
their records are great. They're one of the countries that a lot of them, they put in the parents and the grandparents and, people's
Ah.
occupations and whether they're living still. And I mean, you can just find a branch can explode if you get a good set of records. So that's really fun.
Yeah, really. Catholic Church can be very remarkable at keeping records sometimes, in particular.
Hmm.
It's impressive. Uh,
Yeah, I found one the
all
other day.
right.
I was researching, and it was like early 17th or late 16th century. And the priest had the most beautiful handwriting, and he didn't abbreviate everything. I was like, oh man, I want to go back and tell this priest I love him. He's so wonderful.
Yeah, I've got some pages in my part of my family's Czech and also Catholic, so we get some utterly just beautifully written documents in some lines of that side of the family.
Yeah, and then you go to the
It's
next book, and
wonderful.
you're
And
like, oh,
then,
the priest changed.
yeah, and it's chicken scratch.
And
Yep,
everything's
no, it's
abbreviated. Everything.
yeah.
Well,
And
while we're,
sometimes it's abbreviated in fake Latin, which is impossible to interpret. But
yeah.
anyway, uh,
Well, I'm going to go ahead and touch on a few of our discoveries. And I know these ones weren't, these were listed on the top of the G2G post if you go and look and see where Roger's highlights are, not necessarily the very top of what our bounty points were for discoveries, but that's okay. And I should probably add before I start this, that we still, every challenge week, we have some new people that come in and join the challenge, and they're not quite sure how the scoring works. And, it is different this year from last year. So for this year, what we do is we give 1 point for every direct ancestor, or sorry, I'm going to say that wrong. We give the 3 points for every direct ancestor that you add. And then we give 2 points for every peripheral relative in the nuclear family. So like if you're adding the siblings or the children or, anybody that's within one step, you still get 2 points for that. But we also go out to 7 degrees this year. So you can branch sideways, and get those aunts and uncles and cousins that they interacted with in their lifetime, and you still get a point each for it. And then the other thing that we give bounty points for is, of course, we still have our brick wall ancestors, which we had last year. But this year, what's different is we don't get those brick wall ancestors until the weekend. And so when the weekend hits, the captain and I look, Thomas and I pick some names out. And, those were the ones that the group was challenged with to try and find parents for. And then the third way you can get it, and this is also new this year, is discoveries. So if you find something interesting, you want to put that on the space page, because if you just put it like in the Discord chat or the G2G, it may not make it into the survey. So, if you find something interesting, put it on the space page. I put together a survey that goes out Wednesday morning, and people can vote on it. And if you get your discovery chosen, you get 10 points each for the ones that are chosen. And I have had, excuse me, I'm going to itchy throat today. I have had weeks where somebody just swept the whole thing or almost all of it, that just put a lot of the discoveries in there. So, don't forget to do those. So at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and do a few of these. And the first one was found by Donna. And this was a really sad one. This was Roger's great grandfather's sister. So his great aunt, or great grand aunt, Maria Elizabeth Federer. So that's on the father's side. She lost 9 out of her 10 children before the age of 3. And we often see a lot of child deaths in the mid 1800s, especially. But not 9 out of 10. I mean, that is just incredible. I don't know how, they even made it through that, but only one of their children lived to adulthood. And then the next one was by Thomas here. So we have a first cousin, Francis Bischoff, and he studied theology at the University of Freiburg. He was ordained as a priest in 1928, and he worked up in the mountains. He held mass at a mountain peak for 10 months following his ordinance, which is really, really cool. That's something different. And then he was assigned to the Diocese of Lafayette in Louisiana. So he served as a pastor at various parishes until illness required him to retire in 1958. So you're talking 30 years.
Yeah, it was a really long time. I was hoping I'd find a photo of him, but I didn't have any success.
Yeah, that's too bad. That really would have been great.
I do have a photo of his brother, though. Actually, since you're about to get to the brother, I'm gonna show it real quickly if that's all right. Because I also found that the brother also worked as a Catholic priest, and here we are. Unlike Francis, who was sent to Louisiana, his brother was sent to Brazil. And so we have his actual passport image right here with the collar and everything. And so he was stationed at, I don't remember the name of the port. Oh, okay. Well, he was the next one on the main thing, all that. But anyway, I wish we had more documents for him in Brazil. We don't actually have a death date for him yet, but it was really interesting to see that and how the occupation was running in the family and all that. Anyway, It's a nice photo.
And interesting to see that they wound up so split up. You think about your interactions with your family now, and to have like several of them go off to other countries. Doing it for a good cause, but that would be kind of hard being separated from everyone like that.
Oh, absolutely.
I guess I should have been showing mine. Let's see. Let's go ahead and talk about Susanna a little bit. And excuse me, goodness. Susanna was Roger's 4th great grandmother, and on his mother's side. And she was actually featured with her husband, Jacobus, 3 times on the side of his tree through 3 of her children. So they were on the tree a lot. And we saw that in Endogamy, and, where you wind up with pedigree collapse, and it kind of takes away several of those lines out there.
That was something I just want to comment. I was reminded of in the entirety of this research of doing Quebecois work as well, because it's like the same thing where we have so many of these profiles and there's just such a high degree of endogamy. I did not realize that we had the same degree of that with the Afrikaans research.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't either. And then we have Sebastianus Federer, and he wound up being one of our oldest ancestors that were found on that line. So he was born about 1633 in Switzerland. He married Anna Seiss, and they had a number of children. And, this is one of those that it'll be on somebody's to-do list to go ahead and do a little more research on them and find the rest of the children and whatnot. But it's really fun just to see that these lines stretch back that far. And he and Anna did have supposedly 6 children, 5 sons. So that's a lot of boys in the house. And, that'll be something that somebody can look at in the future and try and expand that line out so that, we have a chance of connecting them to more WikiTree cousins.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that his wife's name is Seitz yet again, because Roger's great grandmother's last name is Seitz, and we see the name repeating over and over and over again in the family
I
lines and all
know.
that. We get the Federer and Seitz and the Coureurs and a couple other families that all just seem to be constantly intermarrying with one another.
I know,
It's
and you had to be
fascinating.
so careful because of that, because then you don't know, is the name just common? And you look at something and you're like, oh man, I know this name. You have to go back and look through the branches and go, oh, yep, they're already on here. So I
Yeah.
don't want to make a duplicate. I just want to attach them to those correct ones. Yeah, that was definitely one of the difficulties.
Especially when they all have the same given names because of the Catholic Church
Mhm.
again. It was really interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely hard to sort out. And I know we did actually have a few people, we talked about connections earlier, and we did have a few people that wound up a little bit further than what they started out. But that's because, we had some really dedicated researchers spending a lot of hours untangling some conflated genealogies they had found elsewhere online and trying to get it all sorted out on WikiTree to make sure that we are putting out the most accurate information that we can about these families. And so some of them were attached speculatively so that we'd have somewhere to attach records and put research notes, and then they looked at it more and they're like, oh no, this shouldn't be with this person, this goes to this other family. And so a couple of those lines were trimmed off and people were like, hey, wait a minute, how do I get further away? Well, that's how that
Yeah.
happens. But it's an important part of the process. So and then when we go on to Ann Croucher here, Ann Croucher Boast, and she kind of takes us off into the Sutherlands. And so she had lived originally, she had lived originally in Westerham, England, but she moved to Orpington after 1750 when her cousin James was executed for smuggling. Now, James was Roger's fifth great grand uncle. And these Sandilands, I don't know, they were just the most interesting family, and not just because of the crimes they committed. There were
Yeah.
other stories and things about their lives, but these are the ones that stand out because, if you can find the articles, and they usually are, you're either, wealthy or politically motivated, or you've committed a crime. And those are the things that wind up in the paper. So those are the things we wind up finding. But these Sandilands definitely did just have a hard time. And John here was indicted for breaking and entering into the dwelling of Aaron Franks in 1772, about 2 a.m. So I don't know what he was out doing wandering at 2 a.m, but he was actually executed. And it's really sad to read about. He had wound up so sick and weak that he wasn't, they weren't even sure if he'd survive. And they give an account of his final hours on the Old Bailey website. And, here you read about this man that maybe at this point it was welcome to him to be executed because his health was so poor and, he was barely functioning. But you really don't know what was going on in his life that this breaking and entering happened,
Mhm.
So, I mean, no judgment because things may have been tough. And we've seen that in the past with the challenge. We've found articles where somebody stole some small amount of something, and then you look into it further when you have the time and you find out that, they had 8 kids they had to feed and they lost their job that month. And, they were just stealing just enough to feed their kids. I mean, I'm not saying stealing is okay, but it really puts it into perspective, when you find out what the reasons are. And we don't always find those right away. So, makes you wonder what the story is behind it. And
Yeah.
then James here, the brother, he was a butcher in Westerham, and he was actually a smuggler who was associated with the notorious Hawkhurst game. So, here he was committing all these crimes, and what he actually wound up at the Old Bailey for was tax evasion of all things. So, not his smuggling and his other illegal endeavors. He got in trouble for taxes. So, lesson is on that: always do your taxes correctly. Um, no, but they did actually wind up executing him as well. So, once again, I mean, you go to the family that wasn't involved in these endeavors, and you just think about how tragic that must be, to have one and then the brother also executed later. for illegal activity. It just would be, heartbreaking. That would be heartbreaking to me, if that happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what other ones did you find really interesting this week, Thomas?
No, I mean,
There's a lot.
Yeah, no, after I got sick halfway through the week, I got to sit back a little bit and watch all the work that was being done, especially on the South African side and that Sandalan family in particular. Because I was focusing almost entirely on the Swiss side. I wanted to see if we could get at least a couple connections there, and sadly, it did not pan out quite as well as I had hoped. But even still, I know we had those stories. Did we? Did you have Robert Sandalan on that list? I know he
I don't
was
think
in
I
the
did.
list
No,
of.
I just had John and James.
Okay. Robert was on our list of interesting finds as well, the full list, because he worked for a while as a chemist and a druggist, but he was apparently charged for neglect of duty at one point. He was taken to court because he was allowing piles of manure and rubbish to build up along the road at Market End in Bicester, England, and was given 2 weeks to clear it all up, apparently. And that was part of his job, which is bound to be, given hygiene standards, significantly more dangerous than it is now.
Yeah, definitely.
Not something I would want to do, to say the least. Yeah. And then Dunya also pointed out that there was a couple on the Swiss side of the family, Johann Jakob Masnauer and Maria Franziska Büchler, who died a day apart when they were both, I think, around 50 years old or something like that. And so we were speculating as to it might have been some sort of local contagion, illness, something that was going around, which seems fitting given that we're all getting a cold right now.
Yeah, we're dealing with colds, but
let's see. I'm not
get
sure. Was
back
there any other big ones on the list that we didn't get on the final one?
Well, the other one that wasn't huge, but another one of the Sandalenses we had William, and he was Miller, and he was sued for flooding the neighbor's meadow. So, there again, you're wondering what the backstory is. Did him and the neighbor really not get along, and the neighbor was just irritated, or did he cause some great damage to the neighbor's crops or his barn or something like that? But it's interesting, the little tidbits that wind up making the newspaper and come out when you start doing this research. Oh, and I didn't get to show, I want to show one more thing. We were playing around in one of the Zoom chats, and if you guys ever want to join us in the Zoom chat, you weren't doing
I love
yet.
those sorts of stories.
Yeah, it is fun.
Okay.
But Alesh was playing with the maps and showing them to us, so we were all captivated with the maps. But this just goes to show where we were talking about. There was definitely 2 locations within those generations. That was all there was. And that tiny little red line you see going off to the United States, I don't think that one's at one of our US people. I think that's one that the location just wasn't in there correctly, so it was popping up, because I only did a couple generations worth. But it's really, great. And if you've never played around in WikiTree Plus and looked at the maps on this, you should try it sometime. You're not going to break anything if you can't figure it out. But it's really fun to say, oh, I want to see all of my ancestors and where they lived. Or you can say, I want to see, 5 generations of my ancestors, which ones migrated, and it'll show you the arrow showing you, where they went from and to. And so it's a lot of fun if you have a variety of locations.
Yeah, it's something I've been meaning to look more into. I've never played around with it too much, but it was really fun watching Alesh going over it on our call.
Yeah, I wound up in a Discord call with him because I was trying to do something else in the maps, and I was like, "What am I doing?" I do love
those sorts of stories, like the one about flooding the field with Williams.
Yeah, they're really fun and
I'm getting
interesting.
some cutting out in audio right now. Can you hear me all right at the moment?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I have one of my great grandparents,
Okay,
and
good.
we talked about this in Zoom too, where he had been fined for letting his livestock wander over to the neighbors' pastures, and they were
Yes.
grazing on the neighbor's grass. And so, the first time they just gave him this little tiny fine. It was like 50 cents for that. And then the next time the judge was like, "No, you didn't learn the first time." So now the fine's going to be a lot larger. But I got a good chuckle over it that he was letting his livestock go over and graze on the neighbor's grass,
Yeah.
and that was part of their, reality at the time. I mean, it's all relative. If you were really irritated with a neighbor, it would feel important at the time. But when we look back at those little stories, they're just kind of amusing.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I'm looking through the. Oh, we should probably. Do we want to show the free space page that Donna set up? Or
Yeah, that'd be great.
with
I love
all
it
the
when
info about
people are
Berneck,
able to,
since that was
yeah,
our major location there. I'm gonna share the screen on that. Let's see. Yeah, no, let's see. Is that loaded? Can you see the page?
yeah.
There we go. It took a second. It's always exciting to see what sort of space pages pop up during the week, especially when you get everything in this one location, all that. And so Donna was kind enough to set up one for Berneck, and with all these wonderful photos with the coat of arms and the locations of the church and so on and so forth. And so went through and got to put in a little bit of history and notable persons, which includes, of course, Roger Federer and the Federer family. But it was a good place that we were able to go in and attach a bunch of info and profiles that are connected to Berneck. So if, for instance, we can go down and take a look at the category as well, and we can see this will not be all the profiles, but there are 157 profiles connected to Berneck now, and a lot of these will have been created just within the last week. In fact, see, there are a whole bunch of Federers right here.
Yeah.
Because it's the main family we're looking at. But we can go in and see they're listed under the one place study as well, because we can put this little sticker here on any profile that has ties to the location. And that's just an easy way to categorize and see who might have been living at the same place at the same time and all that. It's very useful.
Well, that's just one of the many, many great things about WikiTree. When you work on the other family sites, you can't do that. But with WikiTree, you can say, hey, I wonder how many of my ancestors did live in this county at this time or in this specific town. And, as long as people are adding the categories when they create the profiles, then, you can just see an overall look of everybody that, may have lived around them or wound up connected. And, that's really great. Somebody's asking, how do you do the codes to make it look like that? They may just be talking about what the new extension is doing as far as looks to the profiles and categories.
Yeah, do you want to talk about the new extension?
Well, we've got a couple of extensions that everybody, including myself, man, I love those. I talk about those all the time to my projects because they are free apps or extensions, and they're made for us to use, and they make our life so much easier. But right now, what they're doing, if you haven't been watching the Hacktoberfest videos, is they're taking a lot of these little individual extensions that we love, like Sorcerer or AGC, which is a JetCom cleaner, and they're wrapping them into one big single free extension, which is just the WikiTree extension. So, once you get that, and they're just about done and ready to wrap it up, they've been working on it all month. A whole group of people have been. Once again, it's a free extension, and you add it to your browser, and it just changes the way things like that look. You don't have to do anything. But it changes the way those things look. It can help you find sources. It can help you clean up a profile. There's all these really, really wonderful things. And I know a lot of my tutorials are for individual extensions, so I'm going to have to go back and redo some of them now. But I'm really excited that they're wrapping it into one. And now it'll just be one that updates. And, once you've installed it, you have all of those other features. And so, one of the things are changing the way your profiles look. She said, after you create a page, how do you put in a table, for example?
So there's a whole set of different templates that we can use that are following. I think they're loosely based off of like the same sort of Wikimedia formats that were created by Wikipedia in the first place. And so let me see that. There's a page that we can just pull up, isn't there, with all those various templates.
Yes.
I'm going to pull that up right now. But, there's, if it'll load, that is.
And the other option as far as tables right now is the extension sorcerer will create tables for you, like census data. Now, we don't recommend you put those up in the narrative with regular profiles, but you can put them in a census section, or you can put them on a space page and, and then link to the profile for it so that people can look at all of those tables. Did you find your...
So if you go to our editing tips pages, you can see all sorts of specific ways in which we can adjust and insert different forms of media and templates. And I'm talking in circles at the moment. Sorry. So you can look at specific formatting details and ways in which you can do it. And there is a little section here devoted to tables. So you can look at the specific format that allows you to insert tables. And yes, as Mindy mentioned, there are automatically generated ones that the extension will create for specific sources. And those can be useful, though we try not to use too many of them because sometimes it can clutter up a profile to an unnecessary extent. But there are times when they're definitely worthwhile having, especially in space pages and things like that. Where
yeah, I use them a lot on space pages.
Important data. Yeah. But anyway, this the editing tips pages page rather, I think has most of the specific, well, the looser template things that you might want, and then if you want more specific things like stickers or banners to put on top, those have individual pages elsewhere.
Yeah, there's some of us that definitely like our profile bling, and then I have one just for anybody that's ever visited my my help pages. And this gives you the same thing what he was already showing you, like the basic table without an outline, table with an outline, but it kind of goes into it a little bit more, and it shows you how to make a sortable table so you can sort the columns, how to add extra rows. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so you can see that better. And then it goes into some fun stuff. So like if you want to color the table, you can just copy this whole amount of text and put it on your space page that you want to use it on, and then just add the word you want where it says like row 1, cell 2. And so, that one's kind of a help sometime. But if you can't find that, and, I put the link in there, but if you can't find it later and you're interested, you can always holler at me. And I know I probably, with so many changes this year, I probably have a few things I need to update, but most of the help pages are still relevant. So Judy says stickers, so many stickers, love the stickers. Yeah, we love the stickers. Those are fun.
Yeah. I
Well,
have
I think
so many on my profile, and I haven't edited my profile in forever. At some point, I need to go in and clean some things up.
I know I finally took mine and I hid my stickers at one point, and then I was like, but I don't like the stickers being gone. So finally what I did is I showed them, but I moved them to the bottom of my profile, but they're not up to date either. Like I need to add in my recent thon stickers and stuff, to show the challenges from this year. But I do like the stickers. They're a lot of fun. And of course, on personal profiles like our own, we can put as many as we want. So they only recommend you have like 3 on an ancestor's profile. But if we want to put 30 on ours, we can put 30 on ours. So many stickers. Well, I think we are going to wrap this up since I think Thomas and I are both kind of losing our voice here. And we just really had a lot of fun this week. And I want to thank everybody that participated in any way. If you were somebody that researched, thank you. If you just added stickers, thank you. If you just went in and say, hey, great job, thank you for that too, because everybody needs that little bit of encouragement and motivation. It's just a nice bonus on top of how much fun we're already having doing this collaborative research. And, we'll be doing Angela Lansbury for the next one. So if you haven't registered yet, you can find that pinned in the top of the G2G. And, we're just going to have a lot of fun with her locations and whatnot. And so I hope we see everybody there.